Hi everyone, and thanks for coming to this presentation. So today, or this evening, I'm going to speak about web performance and more specifically about web performance that impacts the user experience. So I hope you have a good day today. Today my day was very difficult. I tried to make my application AngularJS, the cohabitation between AngularJS and Angular 11 with Node 18, very complicated day. So let me introduce myself. My name is Nicolas Frizzarin. I'm a developer advocate and engineering manager at Sphere Luxembourg. I come from Metz in France, and I'm also a Google developer expert in web technologies and an OpenJS Foundation member. So in few words, I love sharing my knowledge through speaking, writing articles, so do a lot of stuff for the community. Before starting, just a few words about Sphere. Sphere is a consulting company based in Luxembourg, France, and Belgium. So currently we are hiring, so don't hesitate to apply if you want. So what will we see today? For me, it's very important to understand why your application is dying, because without the why, you can't solve a problem or investigate a problem correctly. So just after that, we will see what really is Core Web Vitals, and what Core Web Vitals are composed. And spoiler alert, we will see three important metrics. The first one is the LCP, largest contentful panes matrix. The second one is the Cumul layout shift matrix, CLS. And the last one is the FID matrix, first input DD. And if all people are ready, we'll see the next level of Core Web Vitals, the last matrix, which is INP, interactive to next points matrix. But this matrix is still experimentable, so don't try to use it in production yet. So, to be accurate, this talk is about performance, and as I said, this is a talk about web performance that impacts greatly the user experience. So this talk is not on the user experience itself, neither on the user interface. Okay, just Core Web Vitals web performance. And yeah, the goal of this talk is to give you some tools to debug properly your user experience. So first, why my application is dying? This is a big question, because generally it works very well. All seems good because all the data are displayed correctly, and when you refresh, when you click on the button, something happens, so you are very happy because your application seems to work properly, all integration tests passed. So yeah, your application seems to be in a good health. But it's not totally the case, because the user don't like to use your application, and this is a huge pain, in fact, because some user says, hey, when I launch your application, nothing happened. I have a blank screen, so your application takes too much time to load the first page. Other users says, I have a blinking screen, so I lose my reading focus. Okay, and those last users says, hey, when I click on a button, nothing happened, or it happened, but very later. Okay, so based on the user feedback, we can retrieve three important information here. The first one is low speed. Okay, so the first page to display takes too much time to load. The second one is the blinking screen. So some bits of page are loaded asynchronously, and the page blinks a lot. So this results to that the users lose their reading focus. And the last information, and it's the most important information, in fact. User action takes time. So when the user clicks on the buttons, it takes time before something happens. So in other words, it takes too much time before the data are refreshed correctly in the page. So at this moment, the feeling of bug is very, very important, and the user is very frustrated. So if your user is frustrated, he are not happy, and maybe he want to go to the competitor and choose another application. And that's why, for example, some famous bank lose their users because the application is not correct. So just imagine if I solve these issues, what are impacted? So there is no impact on graphical elements such color contrast, fonts, image, or position of elements. And in fact, there is no impact because there is no relationships between these metrics and the user interface. But I advise you to take into consideration these aspects of your application, because having an application with a great user experience, with great color contrast, is always a positive point for the users. So what are impacted if I solve all these issues? You will greatly improve the user experience. So you will see directly something on screen, don't lose reading focus, can interact with the page rapidly, and all these are very important. And if you solve this, your application will be very smooth to use. So it's very important to respect this. So now the diagnosis is made and the user experience is not correct and all the performance of your application must be improved. But there is a big question. How can we improve something if we have no metrics for that? So we must find a way to characterize this performance problem. This is the first step. Second step is we must find a way to help developer, so us, to catch these hills easier. And the last one is we must find a way to summarize into category. And that's why in 2020, Google decided to integrate 3 new metrics into their performance metrics tools. And in 2021, these metrics are integrated under the name of Core Web Vitals. So today, it's very important to respect these metrics because they have a a real impact on the indexation of your application in the Google search engine. So in other words, if your application have a bad score in these metrics, your application will be not correctly indexed in the browser, instead of an application that have very good marks. So Core Web Vitals is a new way to calculate performance of an application. But what are really Core Web Vitals? So don't worry, our application will be saved after this talk. It will be saved. So Core Web Vitals is an initiative from Google that aims to have metrics on performance of web application and user experience. So now we know what really is Core Web Vitals, but we don't know how to measure them. Okay, so let's take the following application as an example. So I have an application that is in production since 5 or 4 years because it's a web application, its gender is natural, and my application is deployed thanks to Firebase, Supabase, or Heroku, anything else, any providers, I don't care. Okay, but my application have some illness, and the first one is the first page takes too much time to load. second illness is my application have a blinking screen, and the last illness is when I click on a button, nothing happens. So this illness have respectively huge impact on the LCP, largest contentful paint metric, the CLS, cumul layout shift metric, and last one, FID, first input delay. So how to calculate these metrics? This is very important because it exists two ways to calculate these metrics, and the first one is by field. So by field tool provide real world data that comes from users in the field. So typically this metric is called real user monitoring, RUM, and all data provided by this way are called field data. And the last way is by labs. So labs tools provide on potentially how user experience your website, and labs tool is for developer for debugging application. Okay, and all the data provided by labs tools are called labs data. So it exists a lot of tools to calculate field tools. So this is just a summary of some tools. So they are Chrome User Experience Reports, Page Speed Insight, Search Console, and Core Web Vitals extension. So all these tools measure the LCP, CLS, and FID. Okay, so it exists another tools, and during the talk of Rodislav, you can see it on dependency. It's the Web Vital JS library. So this library is very useful because it gives us some helper to catch easier the LCP, CLS, and FID metrics. Okay, and give us the possibility to to manage all the retrieved data. So maybe with this data you want to store this data in your database to have some statistic after, I don't know, but it's possible to do that with the Core Web Vitals library. And the labs tools are the Chrome Dev tools also, and Lighthouse. But all the labs tools can just measure the LCP and the CLS, but not the FID. And do you know why they can't measure the FID? An idea?
Because it needs the interaction of the people.
Yes!
That's why we use some automated tool to reproduce like Selenium or others.
Yeah, it's exactly this point. So yeah, to measure the FID, you must have an interaction with your page. So the user must interact with your page to retrieve the FID. So without interaction with the FID, with the page, you can have the FID. So to solve this issue, you can measure the blocking time, okay, and in some situation, blocking time can be assimilated to the first input delay metrics. So what is important to understand is lab tool is not a substitute to field tool. Why? Because the Core Web Vitals depends on three important criteria. And the first one is the user device capabilities. Okay, so just imagine now the technology is constantly in evolution. Okay, so your phone are more powerful, processors are more powerful, you have more RAM, etc. And your application is following this evolution. So currently, it's therefore normal if if the last iPhone, I think it's the iPhone 14 Pro, it's therefore normal if the very first iPhone take longer time to display the first page than the last iPhone. Sorry. Okay, so first criteria is the user device capabilities. Second one is network condition. Okay, so Yeah, imagine people that live in the downtown have a better signal strength than people who live in the countryside. So maybe if the network condition is bad, it takes too much time to retrieve the first byte, so to display the page. And the last one is the other process that run on the device. So today, a processor allocate a specific space of your processor for each running application on your device. So if you have a lot of application open, it will impact the first input delay because it will take time when the user click on the button. So LCP operation, largest contentful paints. What is LCP? LCP represents how quickly the main content of a web page is loaded. So, in other words, the LCP matrix reports the render time of the biggest image or the biggest block tests visible within the viewport. Within the viewport when the page starts loading. So if your score is less than 2.5 seconds, your LCP score is good. But if it's between 2.5 seconds and 4 seconds, your LCP score needs improvements, and if it's above 4 seconds, your LCP score is very poor, and maybe all the architecture of your application must be reviewed. Okay, so a lot of stuff must be done to fix this matrix. So LCP problem is very, very complicated, and in fact, the LCP problem can be a big talk, but I try to summarize. So where to start if you have LCP issues? And the first is the initial HTML document. And why? Because currently the LCP is the largest contentful paints. So the problem is on the first page and basically is on index.html file. So when you find this file, the question you must to ask yourself is, what does this document need, how is needed, and what is the size of external parts? So what is the size of my image? I have to load all the scripts, etc. And when you do that, the second step is to identify your LCP resource, largest contentful paint resource. Typically, it's imaging and script. Very, very simple. And to answer all these questions, how are these loaded and are these necessary when the app starts? So maybe you load a lot of scripts, but for the first page, these scripts are not necessary. Typically, who use moments here? Yeah. Some .fns maybe. .fns maybe?
Yeah. Well, I prefer directly vanilla.
Yeah, with the new API date, with the new API date.
Yeah, but nothing that heavy at the moment.
Yeah, I understand. I do exactly the same of you. Use the new API. So basically, Moments is a very huge library, and basically typically we load all this library at the start of your application, because you must have the Moments objects in the window. So typically this will cause the LCP problem. So I think it's typically a schema is always more visual than a long sentence. So in this schema you can see a lot of color. First color is the initial document HTML, so the document, okay. And in violet color is the still sheet. In green color it's the image, and in yellow color it's the script. So typically LCP resource here are your image. So how is calculated the LCP? Here, when your when your index HTML document is loaded, the browser will begin to load the style sheet. Okay, and because in this style sheet there is some image, he loads the image after he loads entirely the style sheet. Okay, in parallel of loading the style sheet, he loads the script file. And why? Because all people know that this stuff is asynchrone. Okay. So LCP is a very complex problem, and like any other complex problem, it's very more easier to split it into small parts and easier parts. So this is my split. Okay, this is mine idea. You can use yours if you want. So first, for me, it's time to first byte. Okay, this is the time between the browser sends a request and retrieves the first byte of the initial HTML documents. Okay. Second is the resource load delay. This is the time between when the browser begins to load the LCP resources. Third, resource load time. This is the time that the browser takes to load all the LCP resource. And finally, the last problem is element render delay, and this is the time that the browser takes to display the biggest image or block text in the browser. Okay, so keep in mind you must improve all these steps to improve correctly your LCP problem. So if you just improve, for example, the resource load time, it will not be sufficient to improve correctly your LCP resource. Okay, so just a little parenthesis. If you use Quick, this is a new web framework, LCP, there is no problem. Okay, because it's iteration, so typically it's a server that render your index.html, and after that JavaScript will attach all the states and the events on the DOM. So this is called iteration. So if we take our previous schema and split into complex little problem, so first you will have time to first byte. So time to first byte is, as I said, the time that takes the browser to get the first byte of your documents. Okay. When he has that, resource load delay is the time that takes the browser to load, okay, your index HTML document file and all the style sheets. Resource load time is the time that takes the browser to load your LCP resource, and the element render delay is the time that takes the browser to render in the viewport the biggest image or block text. Okay, and when all the time is addition, you will have the LCP matrix. So on scale time, if we split all the little problem, time to first byte represents 40%, resource load delay represents 10%, resource load time represents 40%, and element render delay represents 10%. But this is pure theoretical. Okay, so maybe you can just adjust something, so depends on your needs. Maybe your time to first byte take 20%. Okay, so if your time to first byte take 20%, maybe your resource load delay take 30%, can take 30%. Okay. So how to improve correctly your LCP resource? First, preload resource like style sheets and images. Lazy load your script with attribute defer or async, or maybe both. You can use the both, depends on your needs. Give priority. So this is very, very interesting because it's very, very new in Chrome. So now it's possible to give priority to the browser, to give priority for some resource to preload. Okay, so this is very interesting because before Chrome 102, this is not possible. Okay, this is possible since the Chrome 102. And don't forget to split your content. So don't load unused code, and yeah, take light format, take light format for image. So in other words, use SVG. So if you respect now and you preload your LCP resource or your style sheets, etc., and use async differ attribute for your script, your schema begin this. So I will explain. So now when the browser discover immediately the style sheet in your index.html file, it automatically begin to preload the style sheet. Okay, and because in this style sheet we import an image, automatically the browser will load your style sheets and your LCP resource in parallel. So here you optimize the resource load time and the third step when you split the content, the program. So here you optimize this, and automatically the render time will be impacted and optimized. So now if you want to optimize the time to first byte, it's on the server side. Okay, so if you have a server that don't work very well, automatically the time to first bit will be impacted. Okay, so just an advice, please don't try to optimize the time to first byte on the browsers, okay, because it's not on the browser sides, and if you do that, it will be a very bad practice. So how to debug a LCP resource? First, you can use the performance panel, but if you are not familiar with the performance panel, sometimes it can be very complicated to understand all the metrics in the performance panel and how to debug them. So now, in Chrome, since Chrome 102, there is a new panel, and this panel is the Performance Insight Tools. Performance Insight Tools panel gives you a new way and a simpler way to debug and understand what happened in your performance. Okay, and most of the importance for me, it gives you some links to the official documentation of Google Web Dev to find a solution to your problem. So in other words, Google gives you a lot of things to debug easier your problems. And if you want to understand how to split correctly your contents, the coverage tool panel will be your best friend forever, okay? Because in this picture, you can see two colors, the red part and the blue part. The red part corresponds to the unused code, and the blue part corresponds to the used code. So just a question, who writes Angular application here? Yeah, Angular Power. And who writes Vue application here?
Mark.
Yeah, happy to know you. And who writes React application here? Oh yeah, okay, so everybody. So who use Bootstrap? And who use Angular material? Okay, I just to be sure, maybe you know who use ng0. Please use it. So yeah, ng0. It's a design. It's an Angular library based on the Ant design system, and this design system is declined for all the frameworks. So React have it and Vue have it. Okay, so if you want to talk about ng0, you can ask me. I am a contributor on this library. So, so guess what is the problem with all this library?
They're big.
Yeah, they are big, and of course they are loaded at the beginning of your application. So it's for you. All Angular materials still are imported, or ng0 still are imported, etc., etc. So when you write your application, and in this application you just use the button of Angular material, in fact, all the style of the library is imported. So totally unused code of the library is maybe 19%. Okay, so this tool will help us to debug that and to understand how to split correctly your style sheet with Angular material and etc. So let's go to the CLS operation. So cumul layout shift metric. So CLS measures the instability of content by summing shift score across layout shifts that don't occur within 500 milliseconds of user input. So I know this definition is quite complicated, but in other words, it's when your page is done and something pop on the screen, you lose your reading focus and you say, okay, cool. You scroll, oh, I was here. Okay, so if your score of this metric is less than 0.1 second, your score is very good. Okay. If your score is between 0.1 second and 0.25 second, your score needs improvement, but in fact it just size your image. Okay. And if your score is above 0.25 seconds, there is a big problem, and maybe your architecture of your index.html file or your page must be improved. So what can cause cumul layout shift? Image with no size, with not correct ratio size, and or with bad size. Okay, so please use SVG. SVG. Sorry?
If I do not agree with you, because if you have SVG in raw mode, you know, pixel by pixel.
Yeah, well, it's true.
Sorry, but
yeah, what you said is very true, but it's very easier to scale correctly a SVG image on a PNG image, because if you have a PNG image, you must explain in your source attributes all the size for all the screen.
Yeah.
So.
Besides that, with the weight of the image.
Yeah, the weight of the image is I'm agree with, but it's not here the problem of the weight. It's just the problem of your.
But basically, all images needs a pre-processing.
Yeah.
And then also, for the small one, it's better to get them in base 64 inside of your style sheet. I know people do not like that, but there are no preprocessors to do so, and it loads very, very fast.
Yeah, it's
like
true.
25%.
It's true.
Faster.
I agree with you, but as SVG is more easier to scale, and in this problem is more important because the scale of your image is important because it's that pop on the screen. It's just that. So avoid dynamically inject content. Okay, like iframe, something like that. It's not a good idea. Add embeds iframe. Waiting network before update DOM, it's very important because imagine you want to retrieve a list, so your page is rendered on your page, and maybe your call to retrieve all your to-dos take too much time. You retrieve this, you create a beautiful list, and boop, you pop it on the screen. And web fonts. Okay, so why? If you use Times New Romans and you use maybe I don't know Roboto, thanks. There is not exactly the same, so web font can cause cumulate shift. Oh yeah, I know. I think I know. I don't have internet. Sorry.
You can connect to.
Don't worry.
The Office guest.
No, don't worry. I will use my phone. I think it will. Worked now. Yeah. Oh. Oh no.
Maybe change the slide. Go back and then look for them. Try now. But if you click play from the previous slide,
Might not work too. Okay, I don't know what happened.
Okay.
Oh, I know. It's okay. C'est quoi le wifi? No, it's okay, it's okay. It's okay. Let's try. Yes. So, this is an example how image can
Let's try the way over here. It's called the office.
Yes.
The office guest.
yeah, I have
And
it.
now it will ask you to pop up. No, the office guest, it's continue. Yeah, continue to the internet. No, it's fine. Just click on continue.
Yeah, I do it.
It's fine. Now you should have internet. Or you can close this little whatever. Then go back forward.
Je sens bien. So this is an example of how image can cause cumulative shift. So you can see on the screen something pop. So the images. And here is an example of how adds embed iframe can cause cumulative layout shift. So something pop on the screen, you lose this reading focus. I know it's a beautiful iframe. Yeah, I know. So to solve this, please size your image. Give it the correct ratio. Now you have a beautiful property in CSS, since this is very new, is aspect ratio. Yeah, aspect ratio, so use it. Okay. For adds, embed, and iframe, reserve a static space. Okay, don't place them, and for static adds, embed, iframe. Okay, reserve a static space, so measure them and reserve them a specific space. And if your adds, embeds, or iframes are dynamically or have a dynamically size, please don't put them on the top. Put them on the left, on the right, on the bottom, everywhere, but not on the top. And adjust the size of your fonts with the new property CSS size adjust. Okay. So to debug a CLS problem, you have just one tool, and this tool is called Lighthouse. So in this tool, you can retrieve all your Core Web Vitals metrics. So you can have your the largest contentful panes, your cumulative layout shift, and as I said, the totally blocking time here. That can be your FID. Okay. So I would like to say a few words about Lighthouse. Who like Lighthouse? Yeah. I'm a huge fan of Lighthouse. So now, since Chrome 103, Lighthouse has three modes, okay, of reports, and the first one is navigation. So navigation reports analyze the single page load. Okay, typically it's the most common analysis, and all the analysis before this version of Chrome is a navigation report. You have time span reports. So time span reports analyze an arbitrary time of period, typically containing user interaction. And the last mode is snapshot. So snapshot reports analyze your page at a particular state, typically after the user has an interaction with your page. So use it. It's a very powerful tool for me. So last metrics, first input DD. So first input DD is a matrix that captures a user's first impression of a site's interactivity and responsiveness. I think this definition is not very clear. I understand. So in other words, FID is the time between the moment when the user clicks on the button and the first line of JavaScript code is executed. So if your score is less than 100 milliseconds, your FID score is good. But if your FID score is between 100 milliseconds and 300 milliseconds, your FID score needs improvements. And if your score is above 300 milliseconds, your FID score is very poor. And if there is a lot of things to improve that. And the first thing is the way you write your JavaScript code. So, what increases the FID? Main thread blocked. As all you know, in JavaScript, we just have one thread, okay? And to overcome this problem, we create the famous event loop, okay? So you have that. But there is a lot of problem with this, because event loop is when you imagine you have two promise. So the callback of your promise, you push it on the event loop queue. So imagine you have a lot of things in the event queue. So now when you click on the button, you give to the event loop a new things on the event queue. But before your function will be executed, all the tasks before it must have to be executed. So it can be a problem with the event loop. And the last problem that increases the FID is useless JavaScript. So I know now it can become difficult to have useless JavaScript because all people use WebStorm, and WebStorm says, hey, this is not used. But for people like me who use VS Code, it's sometimes complicated because it says, yes, it's used, but in fact it's not used. Or sometimes in Angular it says, hey, it's not used, but in fact it's used in the template. Okay, so some bugs, but it's good. So how to solve? How to solve a FID problem? So split your JavaScript, break up long task. Okay, split lazy load feature and piece of code. So all the framework now can do that. So in Angular, we can lazy load your feature thanks to the feature module. Now with standalone components, you can lazy load standalone components. With ES module, you can simply lazy load a class or something like this. And if you use Quick now, it's awesome because you can just lazy load a click on a button. Optimize, so avoid waterfall fetch requests, avoid third-party scripts. Okay, just imagine it's not necessary to import moment just to create a new date. Okay, you can do it with JavaScript. It's not good to import that FNS just to compare two dates. You can just convert it in time spent and convert the time spent. It's possible. And delegate. Okay, use a web worker to avoid blocking the main thread. So typically now web worker is very well supported in all the browsers and by all the framework and library like Angular, React, and Vue. So next step is interaction to next point. But this matrix is still experimentable, so please avoid to use it in production. If you want to use it in development mode, go, but not in production. So INP is a metric that aims to represent a page's overall interaction latency by selecting one of the single longest interaction that occurs when a user visits a page. Nice definition. But in other words, INP is the time between the moment when the user clicks on the button and the next frame is paint on your screen. Okay, so the difference between FID and INP is FID is the time. Sorry. Yes, and INP is the time before the next frame is rendered. So if the INP metrics for the moment, okay, this is our for the moment, because maybe they can change the INP score. So if the INP score is less than 200 milliseconds, your INP score is good. If it's between 200 milliseconds and 500 milliseconds, your INP score needs improvement. And if it's above 500 milliseconds, your INP score is poor. And guess what? The problem is on your JavaScript code.
No.
It's possible sometimes. So if you respect all the core web vitals metrics, first page loading time now is good. User does not lose the focus anymore, and user can interact with the page very quickly. So now your user is not frustrated anymore, and he don't want to go to the competitor. He prefers to use your beautiful application. Thanks very much for listening, and sorry for my bad English accent. I really work on it, but I'm French and it's so complicated. So you can follow me on Twitter with Nikos54, or you can follow me on LinkedIn with Nicolas Frizzarin, and you can ask anything you want. I try to answer to your question on this.
It's not model, it's 57 model.
Yeah, but in fact, to be honest, my parents live in Meurthe-et-Moselle, so
Okay.
that's why it's just for them.
I have a couple of questions if it's fine, because we are maybe a bit late.
Yeah, for me it's finished. So if you have questions, don't hesitate.
The first one is you were talking about the ranking of the pages or the website with Google. I understand that Google is, for the search engine, is crawling the web and basically gathering the information and doing semantics and things like that, right? Doing that very well. But here, most of them would mean that when they fetch the pages of your application, somehow they render it in kind of Phantom.js or something like that to get those metrics. And for the third one, even simulating the click, you see?
Yeah.
So that they can get the data for the ranking and
Yeah.
pushing your page up or down.
Yeah, this is.
I did not know that. Do they really do that?
Yeah, in fact, yeah, this is very true. So that's why in all your application in Chrome, in the search engine, okay, they simulate with Labs tools, and based on the score, they index correctly your page. Okay, but in fact, big application like Facebook or other application like that integrates Core Web Vitals metrics and the Core Web Vitals library, and this library, the callback on this library, they told to Google, yes, this is my metrics. Okay, yeah, they export.
Nice that for GDPR.
Yeah, clearly it's not nice for GDPR. Yeah.
Right. And the second one is much more personal. Did you ever use SvelteKit and Aurelia, such kind of framework that are with a smaller footprint in terms of size and also
Yeah. I mean,
what do you think compared to Angular, Vue?
Yeah, in fact I like Svelte, but I meet the creator of Svelte. He works to the New York Times. Okay, and the first goal of Svelte, when he go the first time on the scene and speak about Svelte, it was to animation, to 3D animation, and like all JavaScript framework, you can do all the things with JavaScript. So now it's a library, and you can create.
Svelte and SvelteKit.
Yeah.
So you know,
This is
trend
too.
and it's
But it works. It's very fast. It uses virtual DOM, so it's a part. That's why it's fast.
Yeah. Did you ever use Aurelia?
No,
Okay, yeah.
sorry. But currently, if you want what I use, I work on Quick framework, and this is very fast and very impressive. You can use it. I think iteration is the next step of web application, because currently all the web frameworks for me doesn't use the power of the browsers now. Okay, they don't use the possibility of
The same with Aurelia and SvelteKit. You can ask for a certain
Yeah.
You know, and even to fake somehow the image with degraded granularity so that they load extremely fast and then they come and replace in the DOM
yeah, but this is possible now thanks to the micro frontend that is possible thanks to that.
So okay. Questions, maybe.
Yeah. So you introduced us a few metrics, and pretty much all of them, if not all, were time, which include network load. But you also talked about network conditions.
Yeah.
But your metrics are absolute numbers, so you do not take crappy network conditions into account in this, right?
Right.
So is there any factor to?
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you want to know how to measure when you to summarize when you have a problem with your networks, that's right?
Yeah. The thing is, you gave us absolute metrics, so like for example 200 milliseconds.
Yeah.
But obviously the page will not load the same over 4G than on fiber optics. So
yeah, but these metrics are for this is je sais pas le dire en anglais.
Vas-y en français.
Ah, en fait, sorry for all the people. Ces métriques-là sont basées sur le pire de ce qui peut arriver. Voilà, ça répond à ta question. C'est le pire scénario. This is the worst scenario. Okay, all these metrics are based on the worst scenarios.
But there was something interesting at a certain point. You showed the percentages, and that's in fact what indeed we track.
Oh, the percentage for split. Yeah. So this is.
We know the latency this way, and compared to the rest of the real loading of the application and interaction.
Yes, this is just on a scale time. It's just theoretical. As I said, it's theoretical. It's not taking into consideration the network condition, etc. It's pure theoretical. Ça répond? Cool.
I have a question. So core web vitals, I did not catch that very clearly. This is a library that runs inside your app, but still sends information to Google about the performance of your app.
No, Core Web Vitals JS library it give you some basically it gives you helper function to retrieve easily Core Web Vitals, and in this function you can pass a callback function, and in this callback function you can do all what you want. So if you want to send some metrics to Google to have a better index on the Google search engine, it's possible. If you don't want and you just want to send your data on your personal database, it's possible too. Okay, you can do all the Core Web Vitals is just some helper functions that takes as the first argument a callback function for your needs.
Yes, but then in the browser you have those implementation of retrieving the metrics.
Yeah.
And that's why my question was, I hope that Chrome is not always sending those things.
No.
So
But if you
Chrome, not always saying Chrome.
Chrome is Chrome respect your life. Google respect your life. All your data are not on the web. Okay? That's why when you change your phone, you can do anything you want.
But you know, just to react to your presentation and yours, you were talking about the ad blocker, and we have a machine, a set of machines just for Chrome that is just configured so that people can test with removing the ad blockers, a version that is before the 100 because there were a lot of changes, the version 101 and the version 100, and then the one that updates all the time. Because just at that moment there were so many changes, it breaks like a lot of things in terms of the performance, just the fact that it activated the GPU's acceleration and so on. That breaks a lot of interfaces. Just even the one of IBM, data suites and so on, Cloud Pack for Data, they were broken by that. So just on the Chrome, on the all other web browsers, it was working really fine. Chrome, it's always comes unintended, unannounced, and it's nightmare for the developers. Yeah, I think that some of them do not sleep just because of the next release of Chrome. So, but just wait a few years, you will see it.
Yeah, I will see it.
Chrome has become the next Internet Explorer.
So, but thanks for forward.
Can you give us some examples about the JavaScript issues that can impact these metrics?
Yeah, a few examples of JavaScript issues. Okay, so maybe imagine you have 3 HTTP call, okay, and all the HTTP call are you can do it. Typically, you can do it in parallel. In a lot of code, I see it first call. When I retrieve the data of the first call, second call, and etc. This is waterfall, so this is typically an example. So you can. It's not a problem. It's not a good idea to that. If you want now more tips, maybe when imagine you want to create a promise, okay, and this promise return a static data, okay. There is no error or something like that. A lot of people will create new promise, blah blah blah, callback function, resolve, etc. This is a big problem because in JavaScript you will enter a new task in the event loop, so in the event queue. But if you use promise.result, so the static method in JavaScript, static method don't send something in the event loop and in the event task queue. So for this stuff, you can write this. Other example is when you use for each and for blah blah blah. So all people says, hey man, I always use for each. But imagine now you have a big array. If you use for each, you will have a big problem of performance. For this case, it's better to use the for method. All this kind of stuff can have an impact on the FID and INP metrics. All the LCP is very easy. Imagine you have a lot of image in your application. Typically, on my clients, they use a big logo. Okay, so this logo is here on the page, always on the header, so you can clearly preload this image. Okay, so all the image used on your application, you can preload it, and maybe in some kind of stuff you can give a fetch priority. So typically this can be an issue. And
also with the fonts, when you have very fancy fonts, you can load that previously on a page that is quite static, but with lazy loading, then it's better because then it's in cache for the performance for all the rest of your website, as long as you respect the UX. And in Oidia, by the way, they have the path for good UX. Then you get far better metrics for the rest of your website.
That's true. So yeah, this is quick example.
Another question?
If I remember correctly, I think what you said, Chrome had some new features to prioritize content loading. Is that right?
Yeah, Chrome.
Is that specific to Chrome?
Yeah. For the moment, yes, but typically next year it will be integrated in Firefox and other browsers. Okay, because currently there is a discussion between the teams of Firefox and the teams of Chrome, typically for this attribute and other CSS stuff. So just imagine size adjust is just for Chrome, flex will be just for Chrome for a specific time. Now it's okay for all the browsers. Subgrid is well implemented in Safari, but not well implemented in Chrome for the moment. So it's a big discussion because the big team of all the browsers. Okay, so
not really a fixed open standard for
no,
now. Still under discussion.
yeah, it's still under discussion. But you can see all the progress for all the browsers in the next Google I/O conf, and you will see
Also
something.
The W3C.
Yeah.
See what they will try to push, but they are negotiating. That's true.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
It's okay?
I think
Cool.
we can